What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find good fit partners. And I would say that's probably the biggest difference from what I do and others. It seems like most people that, are looking for investors to fund deals, they look at them as, I need money. I need money. Who can I talk to that will give me money? I don't do that, right? Like we have enough investors. We are managing a ton of money. Money's not the thing. We could not do another deal and we are good. The luxury of that is if we're going to do new deals and we're going to talk to partners, honestly, I'm doing the due diligence on them just like they're doing the due diligence on me. And I want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for us because bad investors will ruin good deals.
All right. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Tech Scenes.
Heck yeah.
We're actually in, your hometown's Newberry, right?
Yep.
So, almost have you home right here.
Yeah, this is like my stomping ground. I grew up in Oak Park.
Okay.
Moved to Newberry Park when I was, a teen. And then office is in Westlake, city council's TO. I've got everything in like a 10-mile radius.
Well, I was just wanted to drive you around town just to show you the streets that are
I love it. Let's do it.
that we can maybe do something about.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Let's start from the top. Tell me about Commune.
So Commune Capital is a firm that I started after I sold our brewery. We were a production brewery in San Diego. And it's a private equity real estate firm. So, the core of our business, we build apartment buildings, we build storage units, and we bring investors in that want to invest in both asset classes without doing the work.
Yep.
So it's built for a passive investor. We are hands-on. We've been doing pretty good. We're kind of finding our rhythm. In the last 3 years, we really started finding the right rhythm with basically what we're doing from a workflow on investment and then social media.
Right.
That was, we're entering kind of a new phase, which is kind of exciting.
So myself, my background's venture capital, startups, tech. How is it structured differently than like a VC fund or funds?
Well,
like how is private equity when it comes to real estate?
That's a good question. There's a lot of crossover when it comes to structure, right? Like in VC or tech, and especially if you're coming into a fund, there's typically going to be a management fee. There's going to be some type of, maybe a pref or a waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
It crosses over, different asset classes. For us, it's the same thing. We take a management fee. Some of our stuff, we have a preferred return, and then there's typically some type of profit split or waterfall with us, an investor.
Now, is there different funds for different things you're investing in?
Yeah, we have
time frames?
Exactly right. So I think we've had about 9 offerings so far. Some of them are, 3 apartments in one fund. One of them has 9 storage units in it, and then every once in a while we'll do one project per offering. So it's we call it a syndication. And then, those offerings, because they've, come out in different times or cycles of the market, they might have different metrics or profit splits. But as far as how we invest, that's kind of the big difference, right? Like if you're in VC or especially like tech, you can afford to have a handful of your investments fail. Because some of the larger ones, you're talking so much more multiples.
Might be the fund banker, just one of those.
Bingo.
Right.
For us, it's a different game. Like we don't want one to fail because we don't have the opportunity to 10x somebody's money. Right. There's just, real estate is a risk adjusted return.
Not looking to exit these properties, or it depends on what type of fund it is. I suppose you could be flipping properties.
I learned the golden rule to real estate, which is don't sell real estate. Every piece of real estate I've sold, I've actually wish I wouldn't have and hung on to it. So basically what we do, we buy something that's distressed. So I want something, preferably with no income coming in, that I can get at a discount. And then we'll work with the city to either rezone it or entitle it. We'll get the permits, we'll scrape it and build it. Right? Okay. So that's our value add. Once we've built the value, I don't want to sell it because I don't want to have to go look for, a new job or a new opportunity to make money again. So I want to hold them. That is not every investor. So typically what we do is usually around year 5, my company will offer a certain amount of shares to be bought from investors. So that if you want liquidity, boom, my company will take a bigger position in the investment. And then if you want to carry forward with us, you can.
That works out well for everybody.
It's kind of a win-win, right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't have to sell an asset in 5 years. If there's somebody that wants liquidity, great.
Right.
We'll go that way.
Why did you get into this? Like, you've done a lot of different things. We're going to get to that in a second. But why real estate?
Okay, so I started investing in real estate back in my first career as a pro athlete, as a skateboarder, actually.
Yeah.
And when I was skateboarding, I had a very small amount of time of making money, and I really needed to figure out what my life afterward was going to look like. And at 19, 20 years old, I didn't know what my skill sets were beyond I can do a kickflip.
Right.
And I was making money at that time too. So I was really looking for investments that would help protect my future or my transition outside of skateboarding. And one thing that I just loved about real estate is I could get cash flow and not sacrifice wealth built. Right? Typically, in venture or some of these more growth style investments, you're only getting paid on an exit. Right? Where that's awesome and you have the ability to really double, triple, etc. your investment, but you've got no cash coming in along the way. Because I was skateboarding, I was so worried about what my income or where my income would come from that I was trying to have additional income sources so that if my sponsors let me go, I still had money coming in.
Right.
But I wasn't willing to sacrifice all the return, because if I was just putting it into a cash flow opportunity, I'm tapping out at 8%. I wanted more than that. So I felt like real estate was a great way to achieve it. And then probably the other thing about it, it's really hard to mess up on real estate. You really have to be inexperienced, or you really have to let greed run rampant for you to blow it here.
Right.
So I liked that there was an element of stability that I could count on to at least put the majority of my portfolio into. That's
interesting.
So that's how I got my way here.
And now you're making it easier for other people to get into it without having to do the work.
Yeah, and the reason why I did that is because that's how I was investing in real estate when I was an athlete.
Okay.
Right? I put my energy and focus towards skateboarding. That was my opportunity. That was my passion. And I wanted to, perfect that, which in theory would relate to me making more money. But I didn't want to sacrifice time to go learn how to do real estate. So I started placing it with others.
Yeah.
And so then I was, getting my dividends. I was having some growth without sacrificing time.
Yeah, it's really smart.
So now I built the company for my old profile.
And that's where the social media part comes in, is because you are marketing to people of a younger generation that should be putting their money where they really should be putting their money.
Yeah, so a big reason on why I started this company was, if we're going to fast forward now, right? 20 years after I started skating, I sold my business. In my business, I had investors. And a handful of those investors were skaters. They were surfers, snowboarders.
Right.
And when we sold, a lot of them looked at me and went, dude, this was my first taste into investing. I was fortunate to start very young.
Right.
They were like, how do we do this? And so I wanted to create something originally for my community. I wanted it to be for millennial pro athletes. And then as we started building it, I realized that there are so many more people trying to achieve this goal of financial freedom that aren't athletes. And then it was okay, millennials are now a little bit older. And now I'm trying to tap into the youth and get, Gen Z focused on trying to set things up early so that they're not, their back's not against the wall in their 50s or 60s, and they're going to go, I'm out of time.
Right. There's going to be a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
It's not the stability of the pensions, put it in the hands of the 401ks. You have the option to do it or not.
Right.
Some people are going to get late in their careers and be like, oh, great.
That's true. You're totally right. There's still a lot of people that are struggling with this, but for Gen Z, they are seeing a very big uptick on putting, finances higher up on the priority stack, and then the amount they're investing into their retirement accounts, it looks better than millennials. It looks way better than Gen X.
Interesting.
So I think we're trending in the right direction.
So let's talk about skateboarding a little bit.
Okay.
Everybody I know that has been a professional skateboarder, it's like a master class or an MBA in marketing and promotion.
Correct.
And I don't think a lot of people catch that, but there's so much brand and sponsor and style, What was that like for you?
It was exactly what you just said. It was a masterclass in marketing without even realizing it was happening, right? So for anyone who doesn't know how the skate world works, there's only a handful of manufacturers that make all of the products, right? There's like 2 wood manufacturers that make every single skateboard. You know, the shoe companies, most of the shoes are the same.
Right.
The difference is the brands have to get really good at marketing their product as being better than the other product, even though, you know, behind the actual graphic, it's the same thing.
Right.
You know, and then for us, how that translates with us is, okay, we have to get good at marketing our product, which is the same as the other pro skateboarder that's marketing his.
Right.
And me as the individual, I have to figure out how to resonate and connect with the audience more than the other 200 pro athletes. Because this isn't like team function.
Right.
Right. I don't get to rely on like a team promoting 20 of us together and ride the wave with them. It's very individual based. And so I had to get really good at that.
What one lesson learned did you like come out of that with that you think is kind of the one thing that carries with you now that you're about trying to use?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say when I started skateboarding originally, I thought that everything was based on talent. The better you are, the more product you sell. And it's not true at all, right? What sells product is when you resonate with the audience. And a lot of times you resonate when you're actually not the best. When the audience feels like they're going through something that you went through, or when they see you struggle in a way that crosses over on something they struggle with, you have a bond right there. But when you have that bond, you have an audience that wants you to succeed, they buy product from you.
Right.
And so I got really good at learning.
Mad.
Well, see, now this is actually where it came in to benefit me. I never thought I was the best skateboarder.
Okay.
So I felt like I always had to try to, you know, improve and master something. And it was actually something my wife said. There's one day we were talking, and you know, she kind of just highlighted. She's like, "Look, you put so much energy on perfection, but you know what's funny about you? You are hilarious to watch fail." Right? When you mess up, you become like a comedian. And so she was actually the one that really pushed me to start showing me struggle.
Right.
And once I started doing that, my brand went in a completely different, not only direction, but trajectory. It went vertical after that. And so how that translates into business, I think it's very important that your product or your service is as good as everyone else's, but product or service will not sell your company alone. You have to resonate with an audience beyond the product. And the first time we ever tested that was with the brewery, and we were spot on. We were able to create something that no one else could touch, and it wasn't because our beer couldn't be duplicated.
Right.
It's because the experience that we were offering to the consumer couldn't. And then that changed my whole outlook of business.
So let's talk about Saint Archer. If I have the story right, you and another friend were, I think, at a hotel room, if I remember right.
Yep.
And you're thinking about, like, what are other brands that we could do? Because they're all the same thing. It's skateboards and apparel and sunglasses, and the idea of a brewery came up.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I was with my friend Josh in San Diego, and I got a call from another buddy of mine who was a pro skateboarder that wanted me to start a sunglass company with him. And when I hung up the phone, I looked at Josh, who was with me, and I was like, "What do you think? Is this a good idea?" And it was me asking him that question that brought us to this, 3-hour debate on why skateboarders always create the same product lines.
Okay.
And then he just randomly threw out, like, "Dude, why don't we do something like off the wall, like beer?" And then when he said that, I went, "What are you talking about?" He's like beer, like, why don't we do a craft brewery? And I thought it was so off the wall that I was like, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. And so the next morning, we basically called our other buddy, Paul, pitched him on this idea that we had, 10 hours prior. And then that began the process of us figuring out what a craft brewery even meant.
Okay.
So that was about a year of research. We started driving around to other breweries, asking for meetings with them, figuring out the process, the cost of it.
Right.
And then we ultimately got to a point where we kind of had an idea of what we were going to do. We didn't have the money to do it. And so we built out a business plan, and we went out and started raising money.
So that was your first, opportunity to raise money. You were never doing anything before. You weren't raising money before.
No.
You were dealing with sponsorships. What was that like?
I was dealing with sponsorships. I had a good amount of experience negotiating. I didn't have an agent. I did it all myself.
Okay.
But raising money, yeah, that's different, man. That was
And who did you raise from? Friends and family?
any. No, we didn't. So the biggest challenge that we had is we had no experience. So it was 3 guys with no business experience,
Right.
and 3 guys that didn't really know much about beer.
Okay.
So I mean, that took off a lot of people that
Right.
your VCs or your big kind of one check style investors.
Right.
No chance. Plus, we didn't have relationships with them at that point. And so, who got phone calls? My mom and dad, my in-laws, my aunt and uncle,
Maybe.
my boys, like anyone who knew our character
Right.
and felt like, the qualities that we possessed, we were going to apply into this kind of venture and believed in us. That's who got pitched from us.
Right.
Now, there's a risk when doing that, right? When you're raising money from friends and family, if you lose your money, these aren't people that you never see again. You see them at Christmas,
Right.
Thanksgiving, right? So you got to be careful with that. We started pitching, and I remember one thing we said to everybody was, only give us the amount of money that you're comfortable losing. Don't give me a dime more that if this goes wrong, you're going to be pissed at me.
Right.
And that probably wasn't the best sales strategy, but
It worked.
it worked. Yeah, it worked. And then, that was, how long have I've been raising money now? That was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So what I do now is totally different.
Right.
But
Then once you got the brewery up and running, things started working really well. This is early days of craft brewing.
2011 is when we
Right.
started working on the idea. When we opened doors, the thing went straight nuclear. The
Really?
second we opened doors, it went nuts. And so within 3 or 4 months, we threw out the business plan, had to get a new one, needed basically more capabilities of brewing more beer because our demand was crazy.
Mm.
And so then it shot us into multiple, capital raises, and we were constantly trying to meet demand,
Right.
and we just could never capture it. It was a good problem. It's just not,
Right.
it's unique. It doesn't normally happen for, small business.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. So what I do is actually help teams build plans and execute. But the way we do it is called an operating system, where you don't just build a plan and then you execute it, because most of the companies that I work with are venture backed. They're moving quickly. They're
Correct.
Like things are changing. They're learning as they're going.
Right.
A lot of them are blowing up. Things are happening fast. So you need kind of a living operating system where you kind of have an idea where that 3-year vision is, defining that 1-year plan every 90 days, defining your goals, your
Yep.
OKRs, your KPIs, and then really like dialing that thing in.
Yeah, so you're explaining my business today. That's not my business. That when we started the career, there's none of that.
Right.
None of it. It
Right.
was like truly startup style. We are freaking building this thing. We're building this ship as we're in the water.
Right.
The systems came. I mean, dude, to tell you the truth, like we had enough guidance to know that there was a structure of management to actually help us get to scale.
Yeah.
But creating a system that actually tracked accountability,
Yeah.
we didn't have back then.
Yeah. And it's really about like having the opportunity to iterate as you go along.
Yeah.
Still have the team have that alignment of where you're going, what you need to do, and how to do it, but then iterate and still keep that alignment.
Correct.
And I think that's where a lot of people fall apart, or they're not having the conversations, so they don't really know if they're in alignment or not.
100%.
Sometimes they don't want to have the conversations because they know they're not in alignment, and they're like, oh, it's going to be a conflict.
Right.
But then you have your teams going 5-6 different directions all at the same time, and that's not really productive.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So as you guys were growing, you guys are raising more and more money. That was probably like I would guess in that time frame with those type of breweries, that was probably endless raise and
Endless.
building it out.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So we originally took, I can't remember what the exact square footage was on the first space we did. I think it was like around 10,000 feet. And it was connected to this huge property, this big, industrial facility. And basically we would just raise money, blow out the wall, and take the space next to us. And we did that over and over and over. But for us, more than anything, it was a learning exercise.
Right.
None of us had gone to college, right? None of us knew business.
So this was your MBA in business operating.
1,000,000%. Yeah, 1,000,000%.
And what lessons learned around like managing people and growing something like this?
The hardest part, I would say, about managing people is learning that you can have the right people in the wrong seats,
Yep.
or you can have the wrong people potentially in the right seats.
Right.
And in the beginning, I didn't really know that. So, it would lead to a lot of frustration with people. Why aren't you seeing this? Why aren't you working this way?
Right.
And so I think I really had to learn how to manage, how to lead, and then how to tell people no.
Right.
And ultimately, take somebody that might be, right seat, wrong person, and say, this isn't the opportunity for you.
Right.
That was a big one. Addressing problems early was probably a huge lesson learned. And then one thing that I absolutely love that we try to even apply today, I don't want people feeling like they're going to get reamed for making a mistake, right? If anybody makes a mistake, I want them bringing it to the surface quick, and I want us addressing it and moving forward. I'm totally okay if a problem happens and then, we change course or find a solution for it and don't do it again.
Right.
But for those that are constantly trying to block failure from being known, I try to stop that to the best of my ability.
And that kind of goes back, a lot of those points kind of go back to the same thing I see is like once you can clearly articulate a vision, and I like to do a 3-year vision because it's tangible.
Yep.
It has to tie to your mission, like why you're doing this. It has to connect, right, where you're going. And then define that 1-year plan. And I like to do it functionally. Like, what are the top 3 to 5 things we want to get done in each functional area of the business by the end of the year? Then you start to build your 90-day OKRs. What do we need to do to get there?
Right.
They need to be anchored in that. But once you have that, and you do that as a team, you don't have the CEO just tell everybody what to do.
Yep.
So you do that as a team, people buy in. And then when they're struggling, they're not getting things done, you can just have those open, honest conversations about it.
Yep.
Right? Like, it's probably not them. There's probably something in their way that the team needs to figure out.
Yep, that's right.
And sometimes people hide that stuff because they feel like it's their job to figure it out. But if you build a plan together and then execute together, then you have the opportunity to like solve problems together.
Yep.
And explore opportunities together too.
100%. That's a really good point.
I think the other thing is like once you have that mapped out as well, people have a sense of they know where they're going, right? And sometimes if people don't know where they're going, then it's up to the CEO or the leadership team to always be telling them what to do.
Yep.
Versus empowering them, unleashing them, like, what we're going to do. We all know.
Yep.
Just go run and go do it.
That's right. That's something you brought up early on, which is it's really important. Making sure that frequently you're reminding the team of the vision and where we're headed. That's a spot on point.
The one other reflection I have on that too, which I think is interesting is, and this definitely happens a lot, people get really confused. Get the right people on the bus, and then we're all set.
That's right.
Get the right people in the right seats, but sometimes people only join the journey for a certain leg.
That's right.
That journey. And great people, they're good at what they do at these different destinations, but once you have, as a leadership team, have like a vision of where you're going, you can kind of look and go, is this the right person, in the right role?
Good point.
Can we up level them?
Good point.
We need to, can we switch them to a different role where it's better for them, or, better for us? Or maybe they're not the right person.
Really good point. That's right.
But then, you have basically a map to understand where the people fit, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. 100%.
So let's go back to today now. Your office space is beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm walking in, I'm like, room for growth.
Yeah, it's room for
So
growth.
what are the functions in your business? How do you build a business like this? I'm just curious, what are the people and the roles?
Okay, really good question. So there's, if you look at our pillars, right, which I really simplify, you have marketing and sales, which is like any other business. We have our, business ops. We have our kind of real estate functions, and then we have our finance and our legal and HR, etc. You got to have your whole kind of sales team built out, right? That's probably the easiest one for everyone to know. Marketing, we have split between brand and sales. So, we have some stuff that is only meant to build the experience in the brand image, and then there's other marketing that's meant for driving kind of leads in through certain funnels, right? And then from there, you've got your setters and your closers and everybody that goes into talking to leads to potentially become investors. On the business side, we have, people on acquisition that are looking for new projects, people overseeing development, which is the actual kind of construction of each property. We have asset managers, we have controllers, and we have everybody in place that can basically make sure that from us trying to find land or a building all the way to completion and stabilized product, we've got somebody managing that whole kind of process. And then we have investor relations. Our company has about 600 investors now. So investor relations it's a full category. And then the finance of it. We have a lot of accountants. With what we do, because we're managing so many investors, so many different assets that all are basically financial based, we do have a lot of accountants on the team.
That's interesting. And is there like a blueprint for this type of business? Is this like something that you've seen over and over again, or do you feel like you guys are kind of entering waters that are kind of new in some ways?
There's like, if you were to ask somebody, is there a blueprint to building a private equity real estate firm? The answer would be yes. If you were to ask me if I'm following that blueprint, I would tell you no. There's an element of what we're doing that is not normal. Now, all of the categories I just kind of mentioned, or the pillars of the firm, right? Most of those crossover. You're always going to have you're going to have asset managers and controllers and marketing, sales. The thing that we do very different is I'm not bringing on family offices. I'm not, really dealing with institutional investors, not really dealing with broker dealers. Right. I go direct to the investor. And we do that through social media. Right. That is not something that other firms do. Yeah. So, when we're trying to figure out how do you create content? How do you create content that drives leads in? How do you take somebody that you haven't met on Instagram and have them actually become an investor? Yeah. Everyone has to be accredited. That is not normal. There's no blueprint on this yet. And so it's been a lot of testing and trial and error. But I think now we're at the point where we've got it pretty dialed. Right.
And so what's your message to those investors or potential investors? Like, why should they invest in this asset class? Why with you guys?
Yeah, really good question. So my whole strategy when it comes to raising money, I'll do this with any company. It doesn't have to be for real estate, but I start with the story.
Yeah.
Right. I want to start with the story because the story is something that others can't replicate. And so I'm trying to take it away from it just being a deal that you're investing in. Because if I pitch you on a deal, you're going to go, sweet, Mikey, you know how many deals are out there? There's nothing unique about it. The story for this deal, absolutely unique. So I start with a story. I move into kind of how it works for our investors. And then I go into, the typical pro forma and ROI, but that's probably the smallest portion of my pitch. And really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find good fit partners.
Right.
And I would say that's probably the biggest difference from what I do and others. It seems like most people that, are looking for investors to fund deals, they look at them as, I need money.
Right.
I need money. Who can I talk to that will give me money? I don't do that. Right? Like we have enough investors. We are managing a ton of money. Money is not the thing. We could not do another deal and we are good. The luxury of that is if we're going to do new deals and we're going to talk to partners, honestly, I'm doing the due diligence on them just like they're doing the due diligence on me. And I want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for us because bad investors will ruin good deals. And we have too much time and energy in these projects to run that risk from happening. And so what does that look like? I'll usually speak to somebody for, let's call it 30 minutes. I'll send them off with all of the information for them to do their due diligence on. Typically a week, we're going to get on another call and we're going to answer questions, that they might have more in the weeds.
Right.
And then after that, I'm trying to get to know them. Tell them about yourself. Let's figure out if we would actually be good partners to work together or not. And then if that's a good fit, we have a new investor.
I love the model. And it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
I got into real estate really early, flipping houses. As I was building out their companies, I'd kind of do that on the side. And you're right, you never went wrong with real estate.
It's
ever went wrong.
That's right. That's right.
And if you ask anybody that's older than you, they can tell you the same thing.
Yep. I have a pretty large social media following. I get questions all the time.
Right.
This one question.
Okay.
Which is, I started a business. I'm listening to you on how to scale it, but I don't have the money to scale. So this is typically somebody who's growing their business through just revenue, right? Revenue growth.
Right.
What is the best advice to them? Should they look at bringing on investors, or is there a way for them to take a slower growth approach in the beginning? And if they need help, how do they do so with limited resources?
Yeah, as one, they may not have a business that would attract investors, period. So they could maybe eliminate some of those right away where you don't have a business, but you could position your business and go in the direction where you could get investment.
Right.
I think probably most importantly is, do you want investors? Do you want to build a business where you have investors? Do you see an exit? What kind of, is it like you said before, is this going to be a cash flow business, or is it going to be an exit business? And you need to make a decision what you want to build.
Right.
I think that's really important. Not all, like in our world for VC and tech, not all software companies or tech companies should be VC backed.
Right.
The ones that feel like they can be first to market. They need to grow very quickly. It could be, a large TAM. That would be something that would attract VC investors.
Right.
However, you could start a cash flow business. You could get investments from friends and family. You could build a business like that as well with investment. But I think you have to make that decision.
Right.
And whatever decision that is, then you define and plan accordingly to make that type of business.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so here's the final question.
Okay.
I'm glad you're sitting now. It's probably one of the questions
Okay.
ever been asked in your life.
All right.
This is the scenario. You are trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. It's a nice island. It's tropical. It's beautiful. You have plenty of food and water for the rest of your life, so no problem with that. But the only problem is there is no entertainment. But luckily, an old 80s boombox drifted ashore with endless supply of batteries. But you can only bring one cassette tape the rest of your life. Of any genre, any era, so it could be today's music. But you only get to bring one album. What are you going to bring?
Oh my gosh. What a terrible question.
Told you.
For the rest of your life? My first thought, because I really like 90s hip hop, 90s rap. That was my first thought, but I was like, dang, I don't know if that's going to be the vibe setter. What a brutal question.
Well, I appreciate how you're taking this so seriously.
I hate this question. I hate this question. I don't think I could listen to one genre. I mean, I guess you'd have to have it be more mellow. You'd lose your mind, right?
Right. You don't have to play it all the time.
You don't have to play it all the time. That's a good point. You don't have to play it all the time. You know what, dude? I think I'm going to go with my first gut. I think we're going to go with hip-hop. And I think it's going to have to be Dre. Probably I'm going to go with Chronic, too.
Okay, I think that's a good answer. I think that's a good answer.
I have to just pick something knowing it's not perfect, but if I don't have to play it all the time, I need to get hyped sometime. I'll mess with that.
I think that's good. All right. Thanks for joining me.
This was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you.